You know, it's a story so many of us think we know, but the reality, it is way more complex. We're about to investigate one of the most pivotal moments in all of human history, the crucifixion of Jesus. Why did it really happen? Was it about religion, politics, or something else entirely? Let's unpack the forces that led to the cross. So, right off the bat, you have to get your head around this incredible contrast. Today, for millions, the cross is this powerful symbol of hope and faith. But back then, it meant one thing and one thing only: a brutal public death designed to create sheer terror. Understanding that paradox is absolutely key to unlocking this whole story. And that brings us to the big question, right? How does a figure known for teaching, for healing, for compassion, end up condemned to the single most horrific punishment the Roman Empire could come up with? That is exactly what we are here to figure out. To even begin to answer that, we've got to understand what crucifixion actually was in the ancient world. So let's dive into section 1, a symbol of fear. See, crucifixion wasn't just a way to execute someone. It was a political statement. It was literally engineered for maximum pain and public humiliation. Think of it as a gruesome billboard for Roman power, put up to warn anyone who even thought about stepping out of line. So what kind of world would use a punishment this brutal? To get that, we need to zoom out and look at the setting. This was a world absolutely simmering with tension, especially in first century Judea. First century Judea was a total pressure cooker. First, you've got Roman soldiers on every corner, a constant military occupation. At the exact same time, the Jewish people are desperately awaiting a promised Messiah. And for a lot of them, that meant a political, revolutionary hero who would finally kick Rome out. And then, caught right in the middle, you have the local religious leaders, just trying to keep the peace and hold on to their traditions. And into this powder keg walks Jesus. But here's the thing, he doesn't fit the mold. He's not a general raising an army, he's a teacher, a healer. But his influence, man, it spreads like wildfire. He's drawing these massive crowds, and while that gave some people hope, it made both the local authorities and the Roman occupiers very, very nervous. So let's look at that first group getting nervous, the religious establishment, who started to see him as a direct threat to their entire system. What this really boils down to is a clash of authority. On one side, you have the established religious leaders. Their power came from being the official interpreters of the law, the guides of tradition. And on the other side, you have Jesus, who comes in and directly challenges that authority, calling out what he saw as hypocrisy and confronting corruption. I mean, this quote just nails his core message. He wasn't just tweaking the rules. He was basically saying, have you guys forgotten the entire point? He argued that they were so focused on the external rituals that they were completely ignoring the heart of it all: justice, mercy, and truth. That's not just a critique, it's a fundamental challenge to their legitimacy. And all this tension just boils over at the temple. Now you gotta remember, the temple wasn't just a big church. It was the absolute center of everything: religion, economics, politics, the whole shebang. So when Jesus marches in and starts flipping over the tables of the money changers, that is not just a protest. It's a direct, physical assault on the entire power structure. In that moment, he went from being a problematic teacher to a clear and present danger. So you can imagine what the leaders were thinking, right? This wasn't about theology anymore. This was about survival. If this movement keeps growing, if people keep following him, what happens to us? What happens to our authority, our position, our control? The fear was very, very real. But the religious leaders weren't the only ones watching. From Rome's point of view, Jesus posed a completely different kind of danger. He was a political threat. The Roman Empire had a very simple policy: absolute order. They didn't really care about local theology, but they cared a lot about rebellion. From their perspective, any person who could draw huge, passionate crowds was a potential problem that needed to be watched or removed. And that's where this one specific title becomes so dangerous. For Rome, the phrase King of the Jews had nothing to do with faith. It was a political claim. In a territory they occupied, if you claimed to be a king, you were claiming to be a rebel. It was treason, plain and simple. Now watch how this all collides during the Passover festival. The city is packed to the gills, and the political atmosphere is already tense. Jesus makes his entrance into Jerusalem, and he's greeted by these enormous, cheering crowds. People are hailing him as a king. For a Roman governor watching this, it checks every single box for an impending riot or full-blown insurrection. So now you have these two incredibly powerful groups, the religious authorities and the Roman rulers, both seeing Jesus as a massive threat, just for completely different reasons. And this is where it all comes together in a confluence of forces. And it all comes to a head with this single question from the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. Now notice what he doesn't ask. He doesn't ask, "Are you the Son of God?" He asks the political question, the only one that mattered to Rome. Are you the King of the Jews? This was the official charge, treason. And what's so fascinating is breaking down Pilate's dilemma. This wasn't really a trial about justice. It was about risk management. Look, under Roman law, he couldn't find a clear crime. But the political risks, they were off the charts. You had an angry mob, a real risk of a riot, and intense pressure from the local leaders demanding action. So in the end, the verdict had almost nothing to do with justice. It was a cold, hard political calculation. Pilate chose the path of least resistance. Maintaining order through a show of force was just way easier and a lot safer for his career than standing for justice and risking a citywide revolt. So when you look at it historically, you see there's no single cause. It was a total perfect storm. You had religious leaders terrified of losing control, Roman rulers terrified of losing stability, and a confused, agitated crowd just caught in the crossfire. And this is where the story kind of splits into two massive questions, right? History asks, how did this happen? And the answer is this perfect storm of religious, political, and social pressures. But faith asks a totally different question. Why did this happen? And that answer shifts everything from a historical accident to a divine purpose. From the Christian theological perspective, Jesus wasn't just a passive victim caught in the gears of history. The belief is that he knew exactly where this path was leading, and he chose it anyway. It's seen as this deliberate, purposeful act of sacrifice, meeting all that hatred and violence with forgiveness and surrender to, in their view, open up a path to redemption for all of humanity. And all of that leaves us with this final, huge question to chew on. The trial of the cross is maybe the most timeless and dramatic example of this collision. What happens when human fear, political power, and a transcendent faith all meet at a single point in history?